7 o'clock. Consistent with the governor's orders extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to make to allow the public to view and or listen in real time to this meeting. If you do not have a camera or microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-in number. Please only use one dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. This location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodations and or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you're a person with a disability and or require information and or materials in an alternate format, or if you require any other accommodation, please contact the town's disability coordinator, William Arnold, town engineer, at 781-246-6308 as far in advance of the event as possible. Every effort will be made to grant your request. Advance notification will enable the town to make reasonable arrangements or to remove an accessibility barrier for you. I'm going to call to order the May 10th, 2022 regular planning board meeting. Roll call vote. Bill Spalding.
Here.
Jim Hogan.
Here.
Theo Knoll.
Here.
Megan Menasali.
Here.
All right. Good to see everyone. Item 2, approval of meeting minutes from April 12th. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes? Any comments or questions on those? All right. Theo, did you have a comment or question? Or no? Okay.
I'm good.
All right, do I hear a motion to accept the meeting minutes from April 12th, 2022 as presented?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Theo, second by Jim. Roll call vote. Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes.
and myself, yes, also. All right, thank you. All right, I know we have a public hearing scheduled for Stark Ave for the definitive subdivision. It's supposed to start at 7:05, but today we received a letter. Peter, I see you on here. Would you do you want to explain the letter that you sent today?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the applicant has asked that he just wants to take a break and rethink the project. So, you know, in the interest of time and the planning board's effort that they've put in so far, we're going to withdraw without prejudice at this point. And, you know, we met with the town engineer a little bit, and we just can't seem to really come to an agreement on the best way to proceed. So we think the best thing to do now is just to withdraw. And like I said, he just wants to take a little break and rethink it.
Okay. So withdrawing your application, that will terminate the public hearing. And if you do come back, you'll have to refile as a new project. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we're going to take a vote by the board to approve their withdrawal. Do I hear a motion to approve the withdrawal?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the withdrawal for the Stark Ave. Do we want to date the plan, Matt? Do we want to?
No, they're just withdrawing. So
Okay.
We're just acting on that.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Second.
All right. Any comments on this? All right. I'm going to make a couple comments. So just because we've spent a lot of time working on this, we've seen the site conditions out there. We've heard a lot of testimony from the abutters, people living on that street. I think if this project or a project down there should start up again, I think some of the lessons, or not lessons, but some of the concerns of the neighborhoods really of the neighbors really should be met. And one of the things that I have been pushing for basically from the start on this is that anything that gets done on the end of this road has to benefit the neighborhood. And to me, that would be a proper turnaround, something much better than what's down there right now. So I feel that if something does go forward down there, that this really needs to be addressed. We spent a lot of time on this, and I heard this a lot from the neighbors. I know there's some issues with, and I just learned this recently, is that, you know, garbage trucks have to back up the street sometimes. So, and I know the applicant's engineer had said at one point, where is it written that we need to have a proper turnaround up there? So I kind of want to address that, because if you look at the rules and regulations for subdivisions in Wakefield under statutory authority, it basically says right there that the powers of the planning board and a board of appeal under the subdivision control law shall be exercised with due regard for the provisions of adequate access to all the lots in the subdivision by ways that are safe, convenient for travel, and for reducing danger to life and limb in the operation of motor vehicles, for securing safety of fire, flood, panic, and other emergencies, and to ensure the compliance of the applicable zoning ordinances or bylaws for securing adequate provisions for water, sewage, drainage, and other requirements where necessary in a subdivision, and for coordinating the ways in the subdivision with each other and the ways of the public in the city of town which is located. So this, to me, gives us the authority to make sure that any road that's built complies, and it's safe for any public emergency that should happen up there, and for safe travel. So the other thing that would point me to believe that we have authority to do that is that our rules and regulations state what the size of a proper cul-de-sac should be. I know we've heard a lot that a lot of times they are too big. I get this, but there's a reason that they're a certain size in order to accommodate the types of vehicles that are normally travel these roadways. Stark Ave is a very long road, and it's a difficult road because it really is not wide enough. So again, anything that gets built up there, I think really needs to adhere to current standards. So I think I'll leave it at that. So if no one else has any comments, I'm going to take a roll call vote on the acceptance of the applicant's withdrawal. All right, roll call votes. Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
Yes.
and myself, yes, for acceptance of the withdrawal. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. So like I said, with acceptance of that is termination of public hearing. So since we've terminated the public hearing, there's really, we have no provisions to accept any more testimony from the public on this. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Good night. All right, item number 3. Sorry, item number 4. We're going to hear from the Conservation Commission on an open space and recreation plan. So,
Mr. Chair, Matt,
yes.
if it would help, I know we have a lot of people on here. I could spotlight the person who's talking, if that helps, or pin the Concom if that's something that we want to do. So their screen shows. Is that something that we should do, or should we just leave it as is?
We could, people can set their views to speaker view if they want, which basically does the same thing. So
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary at this point. So,
Okay.
All right, Judy, you're going to present the Conservation Commission's open space plan.
Hi, how are you? The Conservation Commission is taking on the update of the open space plan, at long last. It was developed by the Conservation Commission in 1986, updated a few times since then. So when we started to look at the update, we looked at the previous objectives and goals, which within the guidelines of the certification process, they're all pretty general. But what kind of stood out was there's never really been a complete explanation of what goals and objectives we have when we're looking at open space. Are we looking at it for the values of wildlife habitat, flood storage, or just aesthetic value? And I think as we update the plan this time to define the values, explain the need for flood storage, the need for wildlife habitat, why it's important, I think that will help hopefully generate some more interest in the plan and using the plan more as we go forward. Because I know when we do the surveys as part of the open space plan, it's overwhelmingly people are in favor of retaining open space, protecting open space. And I know when I look back on the 1986 plan, one of the goals that was in there is protecting the town forest land. And I had to laugh because it's repeated in every subsequent update. And it's still on pretty much the top of the list of one of the goals to be achieved. And we are looking at that, getting that, there's a block of land that's all tax title. So there really isn't any protection of the town forest at this point. So the Conservation Commission is looking at having it transferred under their care and custody so that it wouldn't be able to be sold. But it would also give us the advantage of being able to update the trails, add some kiosk signage, things like that to promote the value of what is there in right in the middle of a neighborhood that people might not know about. It's part of the Golden Hills area of critical environmental concern, which is really a big designation. There aren't a lot of ACECs in the state, and it took a lot of work to get to that point. Because of its unique topography. It's a migratory stopover spot for overwintering birds. So it has a lot of value that really is unknown. And I think a lot of people live within that area, don't even know that it exists. It's across Wakefield, Melrose, and Saugus. And part of it, where the new Voc is going to be built, is only 200 feet from this ACEC. So that's certainly going to be impacted. And it's something that, as we move forward and talk about climate change and how to best protect ourselves from it, it's areas like this that are going to be critical when we're talking about, greater storms, higher water levels, having areas for flood storage. Well, you talk about flood storage, but can people really define what that means? How it affects everyone, why it's necessary, whether you live next to a wetland, whether you experience flooding, what is the value of that? And I think better defining those kinds of issues will help generate, I'm hoping, more conversation, more community buy-in, because that's what's going to help this plan stay alive. As once it's reviewed and it's accepted, that's what's going to keep it active and alive. And I think part of that will be collaboration amongst the boards. And I know conservation collaborates more with the planning board, but the more I thought about it, it's maybe working with some of similar rules. Conservation Commission has a tree removal policy, and it's about trying to educate people on the value of having trees, what they bring to their lot. If they want to take a tree down, then there's a replacement charge for it, or they can replace a tree in kind. And maybe that's something that can be somehow rolled into the planning board subdivision rules and regulations. Looking at more of the natural assets and how the boards can kind of mesh together so everyone is more on the same page. I think that would help. So one of the things that I thought would help in guiding the plan is looking at the town based on the 7 voting districts and targeting in each of those districts some unique, whether it's a recreational aspect, a natural aspect, and kind of mapping that out to show how many valuable areas are in every corner of town. And then from there, the commission has talked about targeting a tax title property in each of these 7 voting districts for transfer to their custody. And then the lot could be recreated maybe as a pocket park, a demonstration garden, a rain garden, as more of an educational tool. So it's across, every area of Wakefield. And I think that I keep going back to the needs to be community buy-in, but that's what's going to keep this plan going. And that's what's going to generate interest, is if everyone in town can look at it and say, oh yeah, there's something in my neighborhood that's, special or different. And it's a huge marketing tool. At the same time, there's so many, Reedy Meadow, hardly anyone knows about that. It's a national natural landmark. It's one of 13 in Massachusetts. So having designations like this need to be more visible. And if there's more signage, there are a lot of trail systems off Holland Road, JJ Round, that whole area. There's so many kind of untouched aspects that I'm hoping we'll be able to bring to the forefront. And since the pandemic, the lockdown, people were closer to home. They were, finding these areas. And I think the more we can do to try to enhance the local experience, then the better it's going to be, because people will take a look at why we need open space more for just the value of aesthetics, that it's going to be critical for, storm damage, especially flooding. I mean, that's one of the biggest complaints that we get with the Conservation Commission. I know it's one of the biggest complaints received from the DPW department as well. And what can we do to help, stem the flow of water? Recharge areas. There's the Conservation Commission has a few links related to the open space plan on the website now. And one is a webinar from an environmental artist, Stacy Levy. And she does works with mainly drainage issues and tries to create more art-based designs that capture people's attention. It demonstrates the flow of water and how we can work, with the environment rather than always creating man-made solutions that aren't always the best idea. And I know the planning board has had a couple of rain gardens come through their developments, and Conservation Commission as well. So I think that's something, maybe looking ahead, more natural solutions that can come out of this plan. So I'm hoping it's I know part of it we're constrained by the rules of certification, and that's fine. But I think from it can grow, a much broader discussion of how we can collaborate to make things better, all across town, whether it's recreation, whether it's more trails, better marked trails, kiosks showing, what wildlife lives in that area, what birds have been seen in that area. There's a slideshow on the conservation website of all natural pictures around town. And one was a partridge that was taken at Reedy Meadow. And these are things that you would never think you would see in Wakefield. So it's kind of heightening the awareness of what's right here around us. And I think it's going to be a big selling point, whether it's new people looking to move in or businesses, that the natural environment is going to help. It's going to be a more creative tool for Wakefield as we move forward. So any ideas you have, any suggestions, we'll be setting up committees as we get things rolling along. Anyone who is interested in volunteering on committees, every little bit is going to help. And Erin has been a great help as well. I've batted ideas back and forth with her. So that's been a big bonus having Erin on my side. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the plug, Judy.
All right, thank you, Judy. I do have a couple questions. So is there a map on the parcels that the town currently, the conservation currently has control of, and the tax parcels that are not in their control yet?
There is. I don't have that readily available, but conservation has control over very few parcels. There's a new one that we just acquired off on Holland Road. It was the land swap with the Angels. We got a larger parcel and then got a smaller parcel. Also, the area that was deeded to the town, to the Conservation Commission from the Audubon at Reedy Meadow. And there's maybe one other small parcel, but I can get you the information on the parcels at Town Forest, because what we were looking at beyond the Town Forest is adding a link. Paul Revis had always spoken about the Emerald Necklace, having a linkage from downtown through Greenwood of all green spaces. So with the number of tax title parcels from Town Forest all the way down through Holland Road, it would be about 100 acres. And it's all tax title land. So if that could be turned over to the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, that would really be a huge bonus for the town. It would protect it against being sold, any kind of future development interests. It would really go a long way.
So even the Town Forest, it's not per se protected. It's just tax title
It has
parcels?
zero, right? It has zero protection.
All right, and that's in control of basically the town council, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the process, if someone wants to purchase, if someone wanted to purchase a parcel, they would petition the town? Do you know the
Yes.
process on that?
Yes, they would submit a letter to town council.
Okay, and I do know that they do send out to other departments to see if anyone, before they put this up. And I know
Correct.
the conservation looks at a lot of it. Just
Yes.
because the Conservation Commission is interested in the parcel, that doesn't mean it automatically gets transferred over, correct? They may
That's
just
right.
not sell. Okay,
That's correct.
all right. What can be done in order to accelerate some of the protections on these parcels and get them into conservation protection?
We are working currently with the town council. Steve Mayo has expressed interest in helping get some protection for the town forest. And I've also spoken with Julie Galvin about it. So we are, it's a slower process than I would like, but we are in the process of trying to secure that. And they've been supportive, the town council.
Yeah. All right. All right, thank you. Any other board members have any questions? Bill?
Hi, thank you, Judy, for the presentation, and it opens my eyes to the possibilities, and taking the scouts through JJ Round and exploring even further through there and out to Reedy Meadow and through Breakheart and all other places has really been helpful for me to understand the land a little bit more. Question about public parks. There are so many there's opportunities, and I know this is for recreation as well. Is the recreation included in any of the public parks. And I know the town forest backs up to Maple Way, and we have Moulton and a bunch of other parks that do, would this open space and recreation plan also determine the future of those spaces as well?
It can.
Okay. Just thinking of the trees, and there's so many beautiful trees in these parks, and some of them need some work. And I know
Right.
there's a lot of invasive species coming up as well.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to how does that even get managed? I can understand it could go into the plan, but once there is a plan, and Matt and the planning board understands this well, it's super frustrating to how it's either enforced or the maintenance is kept up and all that. So not that you have
Right.
to answer this question, but it's probably the biggest concern that your commission, our board, other members of the community, and I'm thinking of that master plan advisory board. There's probably a lot of good people on there that might be interested in helping with this. What happens when there's an awesome, incredible open space and recreation plan submitted and approved, but who takes care of the maintenance and all that?
Of the projects?
Yeah,
Well, the plan itself is only a guide.
okay,
So it will suggest, these are things we could do. These are areas that could be protected. So from there, it's a launch point. And that's where conservation will look at, what they'd like to do in the 7 voting districts on, tax title parcels. And look at, we've talked at length about informational kiosks at the town forest and different lots, just around the trails off of Holland Road and Oak Street. So I think once the plan is in place, I'm optimistic that some of the volunteers that will come into the process will stay on and will be supportive through the process. But I agree, there is frustration. You come up with ideas and, you get excited that, oh, this is, going to be great. The town's going to look beautiful, and then it kind of falls apart. But I think this is the right time to be taking this update on. Since the pandemic, there's such focus on climate change, sustainability. And part of sustainability is not only protecting the environment, it's how do you navigate your community in the event of a gigantic storm? Do you know where the services are? Do you know your neighbors? So I think it's the importance of that connection as well that's going to help in this iteration of the plan. I think it's a good confluence of timing.
Would there be like other, I know the DCR has different organizations within. For example, Lynn Woods is currently going through a big change of their board of trustees. Pretty much everybody is retiring and stepping off. And I know their life work has been to remove hunting from Lynn Woods, and they just recently succeeded that. I'm not sure, succeeded at getting that. I'm not sure if you're up on that, but would that be something that we would look at for the town of Wakefield for the land? Would it go to some type of board of trustees type of organization that could then move forward with it?
I would like to see it rolled into a land trust. I talked at length to Paul Revis about this, and it's hard to generate enough interest. That's part of the problem. And it's developing a focus. You could have a land trust that focuses only on trails, you could have so many different ways, but there are a lot of resources out there. And I think that would be a great goal. I think that was a goal in the last open space plan, to develop an open space, land trust. And we actually had someone from the Avis Trust in Andover, the Andover Village Improvement Society. He came out to speak about, how you start a land trust, how to run it. And it is a big undertaking, but I think it's something that could also I would like to see come out of this plan. But as far as even if we don't have a land trust, it's being active, approaching the Conservation Commission, being a nag if you have to. This is in the open space plan. When is it going to be implemented? This is how I can help. And a lot of the things, I think if we have smaller goals, I think that would help as well. If you start achieving these little goals and then it's like, oh yeah, we did this, now let's check off the next, and it'll gradually snowball into more. But that's why I thought breaking it down into the voting districts, it gives you a broader audience to work with. And once one area is done, then it generates more interest and someone else wants it in their area. If it's a pocket park, I mean, that would be great in a lot of areas. And that could spur more pocket parks. So I think
Great.
it's trying to keep the momentum, and it is a difficult thing. But I think that's where trying to vary the approach this time to heighten the awareness of it and try to create more community buy-in. And I think public-private partnerships could also be something that could come out of this. The new company at Audubon, I don't know what the name of it is, but they produce EV batteries.
Panoramic.
Yes, thank you. They have expressed interest in the natural area around that building. And I know there are some little trails out there that some of the businesses use for their employees at lunchtime. So working with some of these businesses to maybe put up some money to put in some of these projects. So it's a goodwill act towards the town, and we get the benefit of it. And other companies have done that before, worked with the Conservation Commission for certain projects. So I think that's something, that could be something to jumpstart some of the projects. Have someone else footing the bill, and then it's kind of a landmark project. So they get the credit, and then we get the benefit from it.
And Judy,
Right,
sorry
Erin?
sorry if you did say this, but this does give you a lot more opportunities for grants at the state.
Yes.
Did you say that? So, talking about that private-public partnership, if we have a open space and rec plan that's certified within the state, that opens us up to a number of different programs available to do these projects. So I don't have an example in front of me, but
There's also, sorry.
no, I was gonna say, it's just nice to build off from our open space and rec within the master plan too. Judy was in my group and we heard a lot of great things, how important that was to people, as we all know. So I think this just will dig a lot deeper than, and I think people would like to see that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Judy.
But I think it gives us an opportunity to work with other towns as well. There's a trail system off of Greenwood Street that attaches, it's in Melrose and Stoneham. So Melrose has a group of volunteer trail stewards who report back to the Conservation Commission every month. They walk the trails and tell them, if there's dumping going on, if there are, trees that are down, things like that. So it's an area where we could collaborate with that kind of trail network. I think there are opportunities with our neighbors as well. Linfield does a lot with organic lawn treatment. They had a national speaker out 2 years ago. So I think things like more collaborative efforts, whether it's in town or around town, I think would help as well, because we're all facing the same type of things. And with Reedy Meadow, I don't know when it'll happen, but the bike trail and what that could mean for Reedy Meadow, things like that are going to change. The Voc School, what they're proposing, could be really detrimental and big environmental challenges ahead.
Right, Theo, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Judy, this is exciting, and it's nice to meet you and to hear about it. I mean, so the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, this is a perfect linkage for the quarterly or the periodic joint commission meetings that we're
Yes.
thinking about having, right?
Yes.
zoning, planning, and the Concom. So that's great. And right, I sort of wonder if, like, you want to do a quick presentation to the master planning advisory group. And I don't know, Aaron, if that sort of makes sense. Because I think, or maybe when we get through all of those meetings, we keep the band together, and then you present to them, and sort of like that becomes one of the next points of momentum from the advisory group. Because right, the master plan process has its own sort of arc to it, but that would be neat. I'm also really curious, like, in terms of like anticipating future flooding and the need for flood storage, is that something we can map? Because obviously that's going to help be an important, not just constraint, but thoughtful way to try to target future growth as well, so that you're not intruding on those areas.
Right. It can certainly be mapped as far as town-owned properties, areas that could be targeted for flood storage. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but do we have any resources that sort of already highlight current parts of town that are really prone to flooding?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there are several big neighborhoods that are built in floodplains that were built prior to regulations. The
Right.
Payon Boulevard area,
Yeah.
Lower Greenwood. And that's a challenge. I mean, that's a challenge with virtually every permit that comes before conservation.
Yeah.
Is balancing, the development need with the regulations. But I think that's, I mean, part of this with targeting the tax title properties, or even if it's owned by, I mean, some of them are owned by town council, is, what value do we put on it? If it's something that's valuable for flood storage, how do we engage people to realize that this is incredibly important, not just for the immediate neighborhood, it's important for the town overall, because the water is going to go somewhere, and it's not only going to go next door. So I think it's a chance to educate people on things like that. I mean, it'll be a challenge because from my years with conservation, wetlands are generally seen as a hindrance, an annoyance, an obstacle to development. So I think it's just a re-education is needed on why they're so, and especially now in the face of climate change, wetlands are second to forests in terms of carbon uptake. So it has a lot higher value than it ever has. And the habitat value is incredible as well. And that's another thing people don't really look at. And I think that's something that could be highlighted in this plan.
I think that would be really very helpful, because that helps us help you protect and manage growth, and right. And we had a lot of debate around what are low impact development techniques, and so maybe that's not the purview of this plan specifically, but getting to develop more knowledge across the town about what those are. That's
right. And I think that it definitely has a place, but it also has to take into consideration proximity to wetland areas and how, that direct discharge has, a big impact.
No, I think, right, the first step is protecting the wetlands.
Right.
Thank you very much.
And Theo, to your point, the state has a really powerful mapping tool. If you go to Mass Mapper, basically they have the entire state mapped with the GIS parcels.
Yeah.
And then they have a very powerful overlay. And one of the things, if you pull up, is the Title V wetland areas. So if you take a look at that, it basically maps out roughly where all the wetlands are in the town and basically throughout the state. So if you want to take a look at that at some point, that's a great tool. It doesn't give you exactly where the wetlands are, but it gives you an idea that there are wetlands in the vicinity. So
Yeah.
I use that a lot.
Yeah.
Mass
Thank-
DEP also has a mapping system, and it has overlays showing if it's floodplain, priority habitats, protected habitats, vernal pools. Because vernal pools, that's another area that I should have mentioned, another area that should be looked at for protection. I mean, we have a few that are certified vernal pools, but there are so many more in Wakefield that could be. And maybe we could get some more protective wording around them. Because as a standalone, there's no other, there's no layer of protection for a standalone vernal pool.
And Judy, just, I know this is a side note, but with a Voke is being planned to be built on that land right behind Landrigan, tucked between the power lines. Is that water there considered a vernal pool? Do you know?
They are in the process of certifying a vernal pool. I don't know if it's been certified yet.
Okay, good to know. I've been in there a couple times since I've seen the plans, and I'm super distraught over all that, but
It would be devastating, absolutely devastating. And what's interesting is when the state environmental affairs chose to designate the Golden Hills ACEC, one of the comments was from MDC, at that time DCR now, and it was about how they were heightening the awareness of the value of the natural environment. And it said directly, you know, the vocational school is I think 200 feet from the edge of this ACEC and how important that is. And now here we are a couple decades later, and they're about to clear cut, you know, a beautiful, I don't know how many trees. It's really a shame. But street trees, that's another thing I meant to bring up. We're trying to get people to go more towards native plantings, whether it's trees, whether it's shrubs, regular flowering plants, because there's so much more benefit. And street trees, especially when it comes to regulating the water temperature of runoff adjacent to a wetland area, is crucial to the habitat, to the inhabitants in the wetland. And that's something that we really need to be more cognizant of. And Rebecca and I, Rebecca Davis, the conservation agent, and I had met with the board from the garden club last week. They do the plantings on the Upper Common, and they plant around the Hartshorn House. And they are looking at replanting along Flora Way. There's been some storm damage and some trees lost. So we talked to them about using more native plantings. And so what they're going to do this year is, in front of the Welcome to Wakefield sign on the Upper Common, they generally have all geraniums. So this year they're going to try to do half native plantings and half geraniums as kind of a test area, and then start using them more around the Hartshorn House and other areas of town where they're looking to replant. So I think that's pretty impressive. And I've also talked to the Environmental Sustainability Committee before about using the grass strips along the sidewalk as pollinator areas. You know, some people plant them, half the time it's like a trash repository. So it's an area that's small enough, you could have some signage, you know, this is why pollinators are important. It's, you know, the plants aren't expensive. So it's an easy built-in education tool as you're going down Main Street. So it's just another, you know, more subtle ways to, it's like subliminal messaging. That's how I look at it.
All right, Judy. So we are in a process of redoing our subdivision rules and regulations. And when we get further along, we are going to put this out to other boards and other departments in town for comment. But one of the I guess you would say the policies or something that the board's been doing more recently is we're trying to have a tree buffer between a developed lot and an existing lot, just so that I've personally seen the effects of clear cutting a lot and what happens to the trees remaining on the abutting lot. They get the
Right.
wind load and
Right.
soil erosion. So we're trying to add that in there. You talked about tree protection. What else would you like to see? Is there certain size trees that we should be trying to protect? Is there something that we can write into our rules and regulations that would actually protect that? Or do you have any ideas on that?
The Conservation Commission's tree removal policy is for trees that are 6 inches in diameter or larger. That's the threshold. At breast height, that's the general measurement. So anything that is 6 inches or more in diameter, it's would be replaced at 10 feet per linear foot. And that's part of when it's a filing, a wetland permit filing, when they're removing trees. It either has to be replaced in kind, it could be, shrubs, trees, or it's a donation to the Habitat Replacement Fund. And conservation will do plantings elsewhere. But it's a way to try to, sorry.
That's okay. And that's within the 100-foot buffer, 25, 50, what is it?
It's within the 100 feet, the jurisdictional area, but the
Okay.
focus is on the 25 foot.
Okay,
But when a homeowner comes to try to, outside of a filing that wants to remove a tree that's in a jurisdictional area, then it's the same, and we'd encourage replanting. And it was initiated because we have so many requests now for tree removals. It's amazing. I mean, people, I don't know if it's the leaves, I don't know what it is, but we've been inundated with tree removal requests. So it was kind of seen as a way to deter people or make them really think, do I actually want to take this tree down if it's going to cost me to both take it down and then have this on top of it? But it really hasn't stopped anyone. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
and I see where the Conservation Commission is going with taking trees down that open up a wetland area to more sunlight, how detrimental that is. So
Yes,
I
it
know-
changes the water temperature. Yeah.
Yeah, so this board has been sympathetic, and we've actually had the Conservation Commission in on a couple projects that they actually
Yes.
did not have jurisdiction on, but we definitely made sure that we listened to them, and if possible, make sure that these trees are protected. So
Right. Right.
we will.
And I don't think it
continue.
ever hurts to ask, to, suggest it. And a lot of developers are open to it. You don't lose anything by asking, would you be interested in an extra couple of trees or some extra native plantings? Something that's going to add habitat value.
Yeah, and a lot of it is the education portion of it. People don't
Yes.
understand the reason why you want to keep these and why particular trees, are important as opposed to others. So,
Right, right, because I think people lean towards ornamental trees that provide zero value. When you look at an oak tree that can house 500 caterpillars, as opposed to, a Bradford pear that looks nice, but may have 2. And for a bird to feed their brood, it's about 6,000 caterpillars a week. So, and the more birds you have, the more birds eat the mosquitoes, and you have fewer mosquitoes. If you leave open areas, you attract turkeys, and they love to eat ticks and their larvae. So it's, getting people to wrap their head around that. You don't need a sweeping lawn. You can have smaller areas that are planted that provide, even a border of a pollinator garden or an area of a naturally growing grasses that can be a shelter area, a nesting area. Every little bit is going to add some value.
okay. All right, do any other board members have any questions or comments?
I do have one quick one. I did find a map on the open space and recreation plan. I can share it with the board. It's out of the maps that I found in the open space and recreation plan. This one does list, and it might be out of date, but it does list the open space from Mass GIS with the levels of protection from high, moderate, and unprotected. And then the open space that's designated as DCR versus town owned.
Oh, there is one DCR. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a DCR lot at the end of Wiley Street that was taken. There was a development proposed there, I don't know, 25 years ago. And the state Senator Say came in and pushed to have it accepted by the DCR. And they had talked about adding trails at that point, and it's never been mentioned again. So that could be, I mean, that's a nice lot, and it's very varied topography. That would be another nice area to try to recapture, get some public interest in it.
So when is this plan going to be published? When do you think you'll be finished with it?
Well, the commission just voted on their consultant, the Horsley Witten Group, and they are in the process of developing the first steps. They'll be guiding the process. So the first step will be to develop some smaller groups, have a couple of public hearings, have the survey on open space. So I'm anticipating it will be a few months. I don't see it as a protracted process. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It won't be a protracted process.
All right. And does this get accepted by the town at town meeting, or what's the formal acceptance of this?
The state Division of Conservation Services approve it.
So does every town need to have one of these? Is this a state?
They're not required to,
Okay.
but most every town does have one.
Okay. All right, thank you. Like I said, when we go, as we go through the process of updating our subdivision rules and regulations, we plan on reaching out to the conservation to see if there's any anything they want to add or.
That would be great.
So, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to move on to item number 5, discussion of procedures for changing street names. I have to admit, I have not really done anything on this since we last met. I have really been jammed at work. So I know what we came up with last was basically the form that we're going to have. The next step is to actually write out the wording on how this bylaw would read. So I'm going to try to get working on this a little bit more. I don't know if anyone else wants to take a crack at this with the information we have. If anyone has any availability to work on this.
So since the last time we met, just wanted to give you an update. I've checked in with Katie Lafferty, who's, I think I mentioned last time, she's in our town engineering office, and she's the one that does all the GIS and addresses for new developments in town. And so I just asked her to kind of take a quick look at what you put together. And I didn't make it really clear to her that we hadn't really gone through the whole bylaw process yet. But I think, that we all know in the back of our mind, with the current bylaw, we do for any name or any new names, it has to go to police and fire. So I think that we do have here that it should be approved by the fire chief prior to submitting the form. I'm just running through some of her, just what she sees at first glance, and that it should be officially submitted to the entity responsible for managing address changes, which DPW engineering, because it's crucial that's submitted to Mass GIS to keep 911 up to date, and all town departments are notified. Just wants to make sure it doesn't get lost after, it comes to the planning board for the official change. And do we know if it was determined, if it's a public way or private? So those were the few quick comments she gave back to me. I know I said I'd reach out to her from our last meeting. And then just in regards to the abutters, having 100% of the butters signature, but I know we talked about that as well. So I just wanted to put that out there that I did reach out. And yeah, Katie is the one that does a lot of that here, all of it in our town. So I just thought it was important that she saw what we are currently working on.
Okay. It's kind of interesting that there's really not, the full fallout from doing this, what actually has to happen. You would have thought that someone has gone through this and documented all the steps you need to do, but as we're looking at the actual procedure and who needs to be notified, it's pretty extensive. So this is not a process that really should be done lightly. And which is one of my fears, is that if we start getting into the more people requesting these, that the ramifications of what people need to do in order to update all their information is not quite known yet. So we just got to keep an eye on that. And I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to talk through a lot of that stuff. So that's why the process has been a little bit slow on it. But I think we need to explore all those scenarios. So.
And I know Bill reviewed other towns, and I can keep doing some digging. If someone wants to, meet with me on the side, I can do more investigating myself on what other towns do. Like I said, I did reach out to other towns, and I kind of was shocked that I didn't get more answers from them. And so, if someone wants to have a one-off working group with me to try to clean this up and maybe work on the bylaw based on other communities, I just can't see this happening or clearly not going to this town meeting, but the fall, I would hope we could get something together by then. But like you said, Matt, every time you pull back another layer, like it opens up another question, so
Yeah.
But happy to help in any way.
Okay.
I think we have pulled together enough research from other towns. I think between Jim, Theo, Megan, and myself, we do have that material. And I know each layer we're pulling back. Maybe we look for a clear grouping. And that started to happen in that Excel document that Jim started, and we started to add all the rest of the information to, where it started to group it into different categories. I think that's the place to pick it up. I don't mind helping with it. I do have a lot on my plate as well. So it could be a little difficult in the next month for me to get to any of that. I forgot how much spring sports for the kids really takes a lot of fun time out of my schedule, but it's I don't know timeline. What would could we work backwards from fall meeting for a minute and just think, if we're looking at presenting something in September and having that, we would need to have 2 meetings, public meetings, to get the information pulled together, and then to get it on town warrant in front of town council type of thing. So are we looking at having something for the beginning of September that we would open a public meeting to for feedback?
I would think we'd want to have a couple, perhaps public forums, and get input from people before we even, get this finalized. So, I mean, we're talking within a month or two, we should really have, if we're going to have something for fall, within a month or two, we should have a pretty good outline of what we want to have, what's going to go forward.
So again, thinking out loud, working back from fall town meeting. If we have a forum in June at one of our meetings, we maybe put some documents up on our town page to say this is what we have, or this is what we've looked at, or the references. Do we review that in an open forum and bring the feedback? I just feel like maybe it's just one forum and then we just tighten it all up and maybe talk to town council, meaning Tom Mullen,
Yeah,
and then just move forward with it. I feel like, I know there's a lot of layers, but I feel like we're making this bigger than it needs to be. I feel like we need to start concentrating on housing. And thinking about that more almost as a priority over the signage. So if we could maybe minimize the amount of effort put into this signage piece, and really as a board shift our gears like full steam into the housing side.
I would love to move this forward as quick as possible too, to free up some space, yeah. So let's work on in the next couple meetings, seeing if we can get the text of the bylaw straight. I mean, to tell you the truth, it's not going to be a huge, we're basically outlining the steps that we've already visited with the other towns, and we've already got the form, basically the outline of that. So yeah, we could get this out in the public for comments, I would say within a month and a half. So at that point, we'll be in a good position to get something written, get it to town council, and then have public hearing on it.
Right.
So,
In really thinking, we've identified, I think, 5 different groups. Well, maybe more, but it's like criteria, the application process, which is, I think, what we really need to focus on. The required reviews, that seems pretty straightforward. And then if there is any public process, like meaning all abutters or whatever it might be as part of that review, I don't know. And then the execution of the change, like how is it paid for? When is it done? So I think we're there with a lot of the pieces. I don't know. Yeah, Erin, I feel like if you and I sat down for an hour and just sorted this out.
Yeah, I was referring back to your Excel spreadsheet. I should have referred back to it, I should say. But yeah, I think it's just getting the language written down too, I think would make me feel better. And I think we could move forward a lot faster if it was in a more formalized in language and with the application as well. So
Yeah. And Matt's application. I mean, I think we're really close. So Erin, if you want to get together maybe the middle of next week sometime and just review it, and it would probably be through a Zoom meeting and just prepared. I think we just need probably an hour.
yeah, okay,
all right, that sounds good.
sounds good.
All right. Item 6, also, I haven't really got onto that too much either. These revisions to the subdivision rules and regulations, there's no time frame. So I'm not pushing this too much. So I'm going to take a first cut like I did with the A&R and go through it and see if I can at least identify from a lot of the known waivers that people have asked for over the years that are engineering, construction things that identify that for possible elimination. So I'll take a cut at that. So Jim, you had some questions or comments?
Yeah, I think so you took the first pass at the A&R revisions. I don't think that we formally ever actually adopted those revisions and or discussed next steps. Is that something that we want to pick up and try to it seemed like they were relatively minor in nature and were pretty straightforward. And I think that made a lot of sense. Maybe it's a little bit of wordsmithing as it relates to with the advent of electronic communications, in terms of the paper copies. But beyond that, I think that they were pretty close to being able to be completed so we could formally adopt those. I think if I recall, it's like a public forum, and then we can formally adopt those changes, correct?
Correct. I was kind of hoping that we could group these together so that I believe there's an advertising component to it, that we need to advertise for it, have an actual public hearing. So in order to cut down on costs and to be as efficient as possible, try to do both of these at the same time. I understand that, it's going to get pushed out a while because the subdivision rules and regulations are pretty, there's a lot to them, and we may be adding some stuff that is going to list some comments. So I don't see that anything in the subdivision or the A&R is really pressing. So I don't really think there's a big need to get that enacted right away, since most of the changes were pretty minimal. So that's how I feel on that. I don't know if anyone else feels like we need to get this done. Want to act on it sooner?
I would, except for the whole advertising component of it. Spending money on something for that de minimis in nature doesn't seem like it's a prudent move.
Exactly, yeah. That's why I was trying to group everything together. So, all right, we'll, like I said, I'll take a rough cut at this soon, and hopefully have something for our next meeting that we can discuss. So, all right. That leaves item number 7, items not anticipated. I have a few things. I know we did not have a meeting our last meeting was postponed or put off, displaced, let's say, for town election. Normally, we follow the same schedule as the other boards that have board elections. So I am proposing that our next meeting, that we have board elections to elect a chair and a vice chair. I think it's good to have this process every year, just to shake things up and to give people a chance. So between now and our next meeting, think of if anyone wants to be the chair, vice chair, and we'll take it up, take nominations and vote on it. So just so anyone knows, if for some reason they want to be chair or something, it's not like you're going to be hung out to dry. There's, you'll be supported. So don't think that you get all this fun to yourself. So don't worry about that. So
You're really selling it, Matt.
I know I am, but we have
It's
time.
really been a year? Like, I can't believe it. Wow.
It's a
Meaning,
campaign speech right there.
Like time flies when we're having fun. Like it's been a year since we've done this again.
seems like 10 years to me. So, but then again, every day seems like a week, and every 2 days seems like 3 months. And so, but that's just how things go. All right, we have town meeting coming up May 16th. There's a few items that the board's going to comment on. Erin, I know the article for repeal of the wetlands is the applicant going to be speaking on that, I hope, or have you heard anything on that?
I have not heard anything, but I'll ask the 190-31.
Yeah.
I will ask the appropriate people internally tomorrow, and if not, I can reach out.
All right. I mean, if need be, I suppose I could present it. I would rather not. I'd rather it come from the applicant, but I know we've made a recommendation, so I'll be backing that up. But we'll see how that goes. So,
Okay.
all right. And then I don't know if anyone had a chance to see Steve Mayo's presentation on the MBTA housing overlay district that's being proposed. So I know there was a lot of talk about that. I know they need to propose a multifamily by right zone in town, and the amount of units that are projected to be needed is I think a little overinflated. Just from my looking at things, just because you have an overlay district and Wakefield is full of a lot of small lots. Just because you've got an overlay district that says you could put a 3 or 4 family by right on a parcel doesn't necessarily mean you have enough area for that. So I know everyone's been saying this is the end of the world, but you have to look at it in the parcels of land that are existing already. So I don't think it's as dire as a lot of people are making it out to be, but that's just my read on it. I don't know if anyone else was watching that and have any comments on that. Jim?
I fundamentally agree with you, Matt. I think that a lot of people are misunderstanding what the intent of the law is as it relates to the minimum size. The size of the overlay district, or whatever the as of right district would be, has to have the capacity to have that number of units added, but that does not mean it's a mandate. And frankly, just because, for example, the parcels at North Street, if that was included, that's area that would be included in that calculation, but you're not going to be demoing that 6-story mill building to build a multifamily, 4-story or 4-unit piece of housing, right? I think what would make a lot of sense from the town's perspective is determining, if multifamily in this case is a 4-unit, does it make sense, instead of having an overlay district, to evaluate whether or not our general residence or business districts could have a multifamily component that would be as of right, and if that land area would be sufficient. I think that's probably part of the master planning process, but I think it's something that might be worth having a conversation, especially given the fact that due to the size and nature of a 4-story building, you could probably have a 4-story building, or sorry, a multifamily 4-unit building that would be, within the downtown area, closer to the neighborhood character that exists in the current form. I think that's something. Those are some of the things I think would make sense. I think it's probably incumbent upon this board to start some of that legwork, in conjunction with Aaron and other stakeholders, just because it's going to be a long process, I think, in terms of trying to make sure that we do it right, make sure that we engage the community in a thoughtful manner, and make sure that we're not, people aren't perceiving that we're just shoving this down people's throats because we can, and that there's going to be this additional surplus of housing that's going to be delivered in a massive wave. I don't think that's the intent of the statute, and I don't think that's what it's going to do if done correctly.
Yeah, I agree. And also I think the town needs to look at, and there was a lot of talk of this, our designation as a bus community, having one bus line that does a loop around town does really not make us a bus community. Perhaps we'd be, put in the category as a commuter rail community, which would bring that number down some. But again, just when you look at a 3 or 4 unit building for the required parking, all, the size of the building, you're talking some good sized lots that Wakefield just doesn't have the capacity for. So again, the sky's really not falling. It's a component we need to have. It's not like it's going to come to fruition. This is a bigger issue for other towns that have a lot of have more open space, have bigger lots. They're the ones that are going to get hit harder by this, and this is the intent of that is to get some multi-unit housing in towns that frankly don't have any at all. So
Matt, I think one of the other things that we might want to consider as this process gets underway is also, are our minimum lot sizes and our parking counts right? And the reason I say it is I look at, for example, the land the house I'm currently on, which 100% fits within the neighborhood character, it's not even close to meeting the minimum lot sizes. So I question whether or not, if we're going to be going and potentially doing a housing update, maybe we look at trying to make some of, I would say right sizing some of our minimum lot sizes to be more consistent with the built character of the neighborhood as currently constituted, such that if and when, a house got knocked down for whatever reason, people would have the ability to rebuild things that are consistent with the neighborhood character. I think there's some addition, I think there's the strict blinders on what do we need to do to provide conformance with this MBTA requirement. But I think it's incumbent, if we're going to be going through the process of going and providing this overlay district or revising zoning anyway, we might want to make some changes just because we want to make some changes, because the current zoning may be, it could be outdated from where it quote unquote should be or would want to be. I think there's conversations that I think would encourage us to start thinking about proactively as well.
Yeah. Aaron?
I helped Steve with the presentation. I've been on probably 20 calls with the state. I've been on probably 10 to 15 calls with planners in our region and the state. This has a long way to go if you look at their current language in the statute. A lot of it's all a bit kind of the way you interpret it too, which doesn't work either. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be proactively working on it and thinking ahead. I'm not saying that at all. I just, again, going back to that point, Matt, that I think people are all up in arms with this when there's letters coming from the Mass Municipal Association, from MAPC, basically just saying that what they currently have is not gonna work. It needs to be thought through more, and there's a lot of components that are missing. And it's not a one, it's every community is different, and you can't just put that out there for every community to have to follow this. So I just want to put that out there too. But I think it's a good time for, going back to what Jim was saying, being proactive and looking at other things. But yeah, I just wanted to, I think people are just think, oh, great, more housing or whatever. But there's a lot of work still that needs to be done on this. So, and if you look at the timeline, I can't imagine the timelines they have us meeting, most of them or all of them, minus the May 5th one. So
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think Wakefield is going to get a lot of credit for the housing plan that in regards to the distance from a commuter rail station that Paul Revis and this board worked on years ago. I know people are saying, oh, that was all for nothing, but I think in the end, we are going to get credit for this because we are doing a lot more than many other communities. So again, yeah, the process needs to play itself out, and in the end, we'll see what happens. But everyone who's ready to run out of town,
Yeah, that was one of the better points of the presentation, was Mr. Mayo making the point, like, what about what we've already done? Which is good. And when you look at what Reading's done near their commuter rail stop and what Melrose has done in the Cedar Park area, there's, and in the Oak Grove area now, there's a lot of housing going up, especially along our commuter rail line. And I thought one of the most contentious parts of the presentation was Wakefield being designated as a bus versus a commuter. It was all, I laughed out loud when I heard that, understanding our one bus route. So yeah, I'm really curious on how this works. And I feel like part of our board's responsibility is to be up on the facts and somehow have those. Maybe it's the planning board, because we're that vessel that brings the zoning changes to town meeting, so the town can vote. And I think we all know it's 2/3 to change the zoning bylaw. And that's something that if we can promote as a board and get the facts out there, not in a campaign, but in some way, making sure that if people are not sure what's going on, we can point them to the town planning board page and they can see the latest stuff there. I'm just thinking out loud, but I'm wondering if that's what we should, as a board, put into a priority, like how do we address the housing plan moving forward and the MBTA 40A stuff. I'm using stuff as a replacement for other words that could be used.
So I did have Jen, and maybe it's just living in the wrong spot, or we have it in 2 spots, create a housing page that includes information on Mass Housing Choice Initiative, MBTA communities, has the presentation, the slide deck, as well as Massachusetts Municipal Association response to the draft guidelines, information about Chapter 40B and affordable housing, subsidy or SHI numbers are on there, which I'm currently now working with the state. They're doing their reviews for every community now. So that information's on there, as well as other housing projects, but it might be something that we want to add to. If I could put
Oh,
it in
that's
the chat.
awesome.
If I could
No,
put it in
maybe
the chat,
then
I
it's
would.
just a link. It's just a link from our page to that page.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and whenever more housing stuff comes out, I was going to add the Citizens Planning Training Collaborative. They have the presentation with Secretary Neely as well as DHCD. I'm going to add that to it as well. So people, that goes into more detail of the MBTA communities, the presentation that Steve did. But yeah, I think it's just getting the information and facts out there, and just making sure that people.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, Aaron, I see it now. It's under, yeah, under the community and
Yeah, but I
economic
do
development,
think now
housing
that-
development projects. Okay, that's
I mean, that
awesome.
maybe
I
it
didn't
should be-
realize this existed.
Maybe something that lives on the planning board and the ZBA's page is just a link somewhere, because I'm sure people go to the ZBA as well for this stuff.
Agreed. I think it just needs a link from. Yep.
All right. Does anyone else have anything for items not anticipated?
Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry, before we leave this topic, I think that we talked about a couple different things, but in terms of actual concrete actions coming from this committee, in terms of, we're talking about trying to potentially get ahead of things or whatnot, but Aaron, I know that there was a number of things as it relates to like the minimum acreage that is required of that GIS mapping. Is that included on that website you talked about? And do we want to start thinking about like where are some of the locations that would make sense, or what if you took a portion of like the business district and you made that, would that be an as of right multifamily? Would that be in conformance? Like just start assembling some of those facts that we can start trying to comment on or move something forward.
As part of this process I've been working with Steve and Bill on, we filled out the saying we will be in compliance, or whatever the language was. We filled out the form. And as part of that, the next step is, we have to have these outreach doing a zoning analysis, but there is going to be technical assistance available pretty soon from the Mass Housing Partnership to help you look at what you currently have, look at your zoning, give you some, they'll be providing some training. So I can send you that information. I don't know if it's, I'm working with them with the ZBA right now to, with the 40B, but seeing what those next steps are for that technical assistance. Because Jim, to be honest, I don't know what the next best step is with how everything is going right now. I mean, it doesn't hurt to look at all these things that you just mentioned and what that looks like. I don't know if that's a public forum, or a subcommittee of the planning board. I'm just not sure where that's at yet. And I don't mean to sound like negative. I just honestly don't know the best direction to go in right now. So, because there is the internal conversations, and I can find out with the technical assistance when that would kick in. Like maybe that falls under something the planning board at our meetings or other meetings that we have. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and Jim, to your point, I think we should definitely work in conjunction with everyone. I don't want us, potentially putting out information that people jump on, because as soon as we start saying this area might be a good place for it, someone is going to be all over it saying, well, that's horrible, and that's, so I think we just need to be careful of putting this out in a measured, consistent way across all resources, just so we don't jump out in front and then have to pull something back and people start questioning the whole process, which doesn't help.
And has anyone checked out Mass Housing Partnership's webpage yet with all that information they have, just by chance? No. So after this meeting, I'll send that housing link that we've created. And then also, why don't, if we want to do homework ourselves before our next planning board meeting, want to look at MHP's website and see what they're offering for technical assistance, as well as I'm looking at right now, addressing misconceptions about the new MBTA community zoning law. It has a whole article about it. So yeah, I kind of get going back to Matt's point. We just want to be careful in the way that we go about doing it when everyone else is trying to figure out the best way to go about doing it too. And, getting people more up in arms, but,
all right, I'll definitely take a look through that and study up on it. So,
and maybe there's some takeaways. I'll take a bigger look at that. By looking at that, maybe we can come up with some next steps as a board, because it does give you, I believe, some guidance, like 8 steps MBTA communities can take while guidelines are being finalized. So maybe we do that, and the next meeting we have this as an agenda item and can talk through that.
Okay.
That would be really welcome, because then, right, I think then we're getting facts into the minutes and things like that, and that just helps.
Agreed.
All right.
Matt, I have just one quick master plan update. Our next advisory group meeting is the end of May 25th, and then after that there will be the next public forum and survey after that. So moving along, and we got a lot of, I think we'll hear what the response to the first survey was in that meeting and the like, but still a lot of participation, and we want to just keep things moving along.
Well done. I heard it was over 500 responses, correct?
500 with the first that answered the first few, like any survey, but when it was all said and done, it was 381,
okay,
which I'm happy with. I got a first look at some of the very draft survey results. So, and we did have, but we're hoping for more people to be at the public meeting, and we will be having this discussion at the next advisory group about our next public meeting being in person or virtual. And so we'll kind of see what happens there. And our next meeting is on housing. And did you just say that? Yeah, I was looking at the MBTA, and what's the other one? I'm blanking, but yeah.
No, I didn't, but that, yeah.
housing and historical and cultural resources.
Yeah.
So the timing fits nicely with what we're talking about right now.
Thanks.
Great. Excellent, thank you. All right, if no one has anything else.
I do.
Oh,
I just want to congratulate Mr. Hogan for his win in the last election. It was a landslide from what I understand. And welcome to your participation and efforts for this board moving until 2027. Thank you.
That sounds so far away in Matt years. If a day is going to be 3 weeks.
do you ever see the movie The Jerk? That's where that basically comes from. So, if you, yeah, it's one of those things. After 5 years, you'd be like, "Wow, that was a long time," or was it? So,
Yeah.
All right, yeah, congratulations.
Agreed.
One more on my agenda, the Safe Streets. I know I keep plugging it. We did get approval for, and the website is working. If you do go to safestreetswakefield.com, we did get approved for July 17th. That's a Sunday from 12 to 4. Full lane of Main Street and Church Streets will be opened to pedestrian and bikers and experience. They'll be able to experience Lake Quannapowitt. So think about North Ave on the north side, Main Street coming down on the south side. Just traffic's still going to go in both directions. It's just that shoulder lane that will be opened up for bikes and skates and whatever else, walkers. And then Church Street will also be opened up completely. And that's for 12 to 4 on that Sunday. So we're really excited to see how that works out. So put that on your calendar, please.
All right.
Oh, I have one thing to add to go along with the safe streets. We will be having our second public meeting for the bike ped plan that we've been working with MAPC on. They'll be having their draft report on May 31st at 6:30. So we'll be promoting that pretty soon. And from that, we will be probably having some open comment period for people that couldn't attend the meeting. And then we're hoping to go to town council for a presentation and then have a final report by midsummer. So if you're able to attend, wonderful. Yeah, I was just seeing if there's anything else planning wise I've been working on that would be, yeah, the SHI numbers, which I know those are things that people hear about all the time. So I'm working on updating those. And yeah, I just wanted to add to the bike ped plug. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, no one else has anything else. I'm going to move to item 8. Do I hear anyone to make a motion for adjournment?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Theo, or your second?
Second.
All right, second by Bill. All right, roll call vote. Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you all, and we will see you on at our next meeting on May 24th.